Lu Qingheng and I were reborn together. After rebirth, we both chose, without prior arrangement, never to meet again. In our past life, we were a couple in turbulent times. I supported him all along, helping him rise from a beggar to ultimately ascend the throne as emperor. He became emperor, I became empress. He wielded power with ruthless efficiency and extraordinary talent, ensuring the court remained exceptionally stable. He was also profoundly devoted. His harem remained empty, favoring only me. As husband and wife, we shared a loving bond until our final days. But in this life, I no longer wish to accompany him, nor does he wish to accompany me. In our previous life, we died on the same day. By then, our eldest son, Lu Shuji, had already ascended the throne years prior. We ourselves were frail and elderly, plagued by illness. Years of conquering the four corners left dozens of battle scars on both our bodies, along with hidden, incurable injuries within. In our middle and old age, these latent wounds flared up frequently, compounded by new ailments of the years. We always had at least 2 imperial physicians by our sides, addicted to painkillers. That day, I prepared 2 lethal poisons that would kill instantly upon contact with blood. I had us carried to lie side by side, then offered him one of the pills. Lu Qingheng, do you wish to die together? He took the poison calmly, a look of release spreading across his gaunt, sallow face. He gently placed the pill in his mouth, took a cup of water, and swallowed it before looking at me. Li Huiyu, he said, let's not make any promises for the next life. I nodded and swallowed my own pill, lying back relaxed on the soft couch, watching him quietly. Michem, no more meetings. We died in silence. When I opened my eyes again, I saw a ragged young beggar boy standing blankly before me, his eyes vacant as he stared at me. I instinctively glanced around at my surroundings, then turned to look at the tall vermilion gate behind me. The weathered vermilion gate bore the characters Li Mansion in characters that shone as bright as new. Turning back to the young beggar, he was still staring blankly at me. Almost instinctively, I realized I had been reborn to the moment I first met Lu Qingheng. He was a destitute beggar, I was the eldest Miss Li, sneaking away to evade an arranged marriage. I remembered encountering him at the gate that day, feeling pity for him, and giving him a string of copper coins. Now, the beggar version of Lu Qingheng's gaze toward me gradually lost its blankness, growing tender and profound. Soon, a faint smile curved his lips. His tattered beggar's clothes and disheveled hair couldn't conceal the noble bearing radiating from him. Miss Li, please spare this humble one another string of coins. This time, I didn't give him a single coin. Instead, I handed him all the silver I carried, a full 100 taels. Then I told him, from now on. And then, he vanished. His eyes darkened slightly as he took the silver pouch and walked away without a word. I knew he had been reborn too. But I only watched silently as he faded into the crowd. Then, turning, I pushed open the vermilion gates. Seeing the familiar plants and trees within, my eyes filled with hot tears. My frail, helpless stepmother, how I miss you. I strolled back slowly. The flowers and plants in the courtyard were lush and thriving, yet not a single one was the peony my mother loved. Once upon a time, the Li residence was filled with the delicate fragrance of peonies. Father and mother had vowed to be together for a lifetime. Alas, human hearts change easily. When I was 5, my father broke his promise to mother, bringing the fallen noblewoman Su Wanyin into the manor. Su Wanyin was cunning and ruthless. With feigned weakness, she drove my pregnant mother to death, taking both her life and the unborn child. Then she coaxed father into making her his legitimate wife. Thinking of this, I felt a deep sorrow. If I could start over, why wasn't I reborn when mother was still alive? I strolled toward the courtyard I remembered from my past life. Along the way, I passed many servants, yet none addressed me as Miss. For those who once called me Miss had slowly vanished from this estate. Entering Xiaoxiang courtyard, I found it overgrown with weeds. The aged doors and windows creaked and groaned in the autumn wind. Standing by the courtyard pond, I gazed down at the emaciated girl reflected in the water. The solitary, cold figure in the depths returned my stare with an eerie gaze. Her features were delicate, yet her clothes were a patchwork of my childhood garments, pieced together one by one. They were scarcely better than what beggars wore outside. I smiled coldly, thinking, how pitiful. Li Huiyu, you've really fallen low. I touched my sleeve, where the string of copper coins I'd given Lu Qingheng in my past life lay. Combined with the 100 taels I'd just given Lu Qingheng, it was every last bit of silver I'd secretly saved over the years. In my past life, I'd given him only that string of coins, fleeing with the remaining 100 taels myself. But villains soon targeted me, robbing my silver and selling me into a brothel. How foolish I was back then. Running away from a wedding in broad daylight through the front gate, what kind of pig-brained fool does that? I wasn't targeted by villains at all. I was clearly targeted by Su Wanyin. As for how this pig-brained fool later grew wiser, it all stems from my entanglement with that rascal Lu Qingheng. And my role in aiding his ascension to the throne? That had little to do with my own cleverness. My thoughts circled back as I surveyed the bare walls of Xiaxiang courtyard, forced to consider where my next meal would come from. Truth be told, my stomach was already singing the empty city strategy. The old pig-brained Li Huiyu would have fled at the first sign of trouble. But this is me now, a woman who survived countless plots in a past life, swept across the land alongside Lu Qingheng, and ultimately became the empress, second only to the emperor himself. Humph. My fingers brushed lightly against the string of copper coins tucked inside my sleeve, and a faint smile touched my lips. The greatest regret of my past life was that by the time I gained the power to return for vengeance, the Li Manor had already been razed by rebel forces, long before I was sold into the brothel. My stepmother was raped and killed by the rebels, while my half-brother was torn apart and eaten by starving refugees. They suffered a painful death in their previous lives, but that was not enough for me. My hatred had nowhere to vent, and each passing day and night gnawed away at my soul. Revenge must be swift, and done by my own hand. Torturing them slowly, like a cat toying with a mouse, was the only way to gradually erase the obsession in my heart. Ugh! How twisted I am. That night, with the air dry and parched, I set a fire. Xiaxiang Manor went up in flames. The servants and guards panicked immediately, mobilizing nearly the entire household to fight the blaze. Not far away stood the young master's Wenchang courtyard, separated by a grove of maple trees. The crimson leaves were breathtakingly beautiful at this time, but once the flames spread there, they would burn uncontrollably. If anything happened to the young master's Wenchang courtyard, these servants and guards would likely be beaten to death by their masters. Yet, to their horror, they soon discovered Wenchang courtyard was also ablaze. With the Wenchang courtyard ablaze, my stepmother naturally couldn't sit still. Fortunately, her precious son was away at private school, staying there for meals and lodging without returning. Her face grim, she stood outside the courtyard, watching the lavishly decorated building swiftly consumed by the flames. Everyone was busy fighting the fire now, and the throng of servants surrounding her had thinned. I appeared silently behind her, pressing a butcher's knife, stolen from the kitchen, against her throat. She shuddered violently, her legs trembling. Whispering softly in her ear, I said, "If you want to live, don't make a sound. Come with me quietly." Su Wanyin's face drained of color. She tried to scream, but the sharp pain of the knife cutting into her flesh forced her to stifle the sound. The servants were frantically fighting the fire, yet none noticed anything amiss here. After all, they were mere common folk, their vigilance low. They could never have imagined that the timid, meek young mistress would threaten their mistress with a kitchen knife. And under cover of the dark moon and howling wind, quietly lead her away right from under their noses. I brought Madame Su back to the main courtyard of the Li residence. The yard was deserted, all the maids and servants had gone to help fight the fire. After all, with 2 courtyards ablaze, the fire had already consumed most of the Li estate and could easily spread to this side. I forced her into the master bedroom, bound her to a chair, stuffed a foul rag into her mouth, and then savored the look of fury on her face. Ha! Su Wanyin was indeed a sight to behold. Though she was already in her early 30s, she still possessed a pitifully fragile appearance, as if she couldn't take care of herself. This look had captured the hearts of most men. It was truly infuriating. So damn annoying. I couldn't resist grabbing a kitchen knife and slicing it across her body, stroke by stroke. The blade was razor sharp. I cut lightly, just enough to break the skin without severing tendons or bones. These wounds wouldn't kill anyone, but they hurt like hell. Wah! Su Wanyin's tears streamed down her face as she glared at me with bloodshot eyes, filled with hatred. I smiled sweetly at her, reassuring her, just a little blood won't kill you. She grew even angrier, which delighted me. Then I noticed her table was laden with pastries. I retrieved a silver hairpin that had belonged to my mother from her dressing table and pierced each pastry with it. After confirming they were poison-free, I began eating them slowly. I ate very slowly, chewing deliberately, just like Lu Qingheng used to. Su Wanyin watched me with terror, her eyes filled with confusion. When I was full, I pulled the filthy rag from her mouth. You seem to have a lot you want to ask me? Who are you? You're not Li Huiyu. Su Wanyin glared at me with a cold, piercing stare, as if trying to see right through me. I chuckled softly. She was bound to be disappointed. I am Li Huiyu. Observing the tiny wounds covering her body, I felt a strange satisfaction. Unable to resist, I slashed her several more times. Watching the droplets of blood fall onto the floor, an inexplicable thrill surged within me. Su Wanyin did not disappoint. She was now in excruciating pain yet utterly lucid. You first burned your own courtyard to lure away the servants, then set fire to Wenchang Manor to draw me out. You must have planned this for a long time. I nodded. It did take a long time. After learning of her death in my past life, my hatred had nowhere to vent. I could only replay in my mind, over and over, how I would make her wish she were dead if she were still alive. What exactly do you want? You hate me so much, yet you don't kill me. Instead, you bind me here. What are you scheming? I studied her carefully, feeling quite pleased. I want you to suffer worse than death. Just like my mother, slowly drained of vitality by the slow-acting poison you administered, watching helplessly as my younger siblings died in the womb, slowly perishing in despair. Upon hearing this, Su Wanying's eyes finally flashed with the dread I craved. So you knew all along. You've been holding back all this time. I smiled, a gentle smile, as twisted as Lu Qingheng's when he tortured enemy commanders. He taught me well. His influence runs deep. Su Wanyin stared at me with loathing and terror, forcing herself to remain composed. The fire will be extinguished soon. Once they return, you won't escape. Release me now, and I'll give you half the estate to help you flee far away. Ha! I laughed at her foolishness. How could I possibly believe her? How could I ever let her go? That year, I accidentally discovered her poisoning my mother's medicine. But mother was already at death's door. She passed away the next day. Before she died, mother told me to endure in silence, not to tell father yet. Because that foolish man of mine, all it takes is one of Su Wanying's crocodile tears, and he won't believe me. But I was still his firstborn daughter, once the apple of his eye. No matter how much Su Wanyin despised me, she dared not truly harm me. Everything unfolded exactly as she had anticipated. However, after Su Wanying's son, my father's only child, Li Jing, was born, my father scarcely remembered me anymore. I grew increasingly invisible to him. Su Wanyin quietly cut back on the expenses for my courtyard, but life remained bearable. That changed when I turned 12. My father was ambushed and killed by bandits. After handling the funeral arrangements, Su Wanyin stopped providing even basic sustenance. She dismissed every servant without exception. I endured this too. Lu Qingheng once said, if you don't explode in silence, you'll become twisted in silence. I suppose I belong to the latter category. At 15, when I came of age, I overheard Su Wanyin planning to sell me as a concubine to a wealthy merchant afflicted with venereal disease. That was the moment I fled with the money. In my previous life, barely out the gates of the Li residence, I was ambushed in an alley. After robbing me, they knocked me unconscious and sold me into a brothel. The next day, tens of thousands of northern refugees breached the city walls. Rebels led them in plundering food, burning, killing, and pillaging. Brothel madams habitually locked newly purchased girls in the basement, starving them for days before proper training. This practice, unknowingly, saved my life and those of several sisters. Calculating the days, tomorrow is precisely when the rebels and refugees will breach the city. That is why I am in such a hurry. Having just returned today, I must avenge this wrong. The fire burned until past midnight before dying down. When the maids who served in the main courtyard returned exhausted to their quarters, they discovered the mistress had been abducted by me, the eldest young miss. Oh my! Madam! Su Waning's blood-soaked appearance was pitiful beyond words. The maids, seeing me press a cleaver against her throat, were terrified and dared not approach. The most anxious among them was Wang Laonyang, who usually attended Su Waning. Young miss, madam has treated you well. What are you doing? I shot her a sidelong glance before lifting the lids off several boxes on the octagonal table. These are the money chests I just found in this room, along with various land deeds and indentures of servitude. I pulled out Wang Ma's indenture. Here. This is your indenture. Go gather all the servants in the mansion to this courtyard. I'll return your indenture shortly. At this, Wang Ma immediately forgot about her mistress. She rushed out, bellowed a call, summoned several nearby matrons, and ordered them to gather the servants who had just been preparing to retire for the night into the courtyard. Before all of them, I returned each indenture one by one, simultaneously giving each person 10 taels of silver as severance pay. Many wept with joy, while others looked at me with profound regret, kneeling to kowtow. Miss, we've wronged you these past years. I smiled faintly and motioned for them to rise. They stared at me blankly, seemingly captivated by some aura emanating from me. Human nature is profoundly complex. They were vulnerable yet resilient. Though they had previously kept their distance from me out of fear of Su Waning's tactics, they never harmed or struck me. Even during the 2 years when Su Waning cut off my food supply, some of them would secretly toss sweet potatoes or stale steamed buns into the courtyard. Living in turbulent times, their own lives were hardly easy. That sweet potato or hard bun might have been a feast for them. I looked at them, my expression serene and calm. The displaced people outside the city walls will attack tomorrow. With Lingqing's defenses, it will be difficult to hold. Take some grain from the mansion and flee for your lives. Under Su Waning's murderous glare, they left, carrying their indentured contracts, silver, and whatever grain they could scavenge from the mansion. The vastly residence soon stood utterly empty. The household held little cash on hand. After distributing severance to the servants, only a chest of banknotes and several land deeds remained. Seated at the octagonal table, I placed each deed one by one over the candle flame and burned them. I relished Su Waning's expression of heart-wrenching agony. Have you lost your mind? I ignored her, moving on to burn the banknotes after finishing the deeds. I wouldn't tell her that in the coming decades, these things would be utterly useless. The refugees and rebels were unstoppable, sweeping through like locusts wherever they went. Houses were burned to the ground, crops uprooted from the fields. Every shop, money house, and pawn shop collapsed. Those documents became worthless. People had lost their minds. If the refugees couldn't live in peace, no one else would either. When I finished burning every last silver note, Su Waning's face turned ashen. Back then, my father was a respected merchant in Lingqing, and Su Waning came from a distinguished family. But alas, their fortunes had fallen. By her generation, they couldn't even afford food. My father admired her talent and pitied her. He only intended to offer her sustenance, but she clung to him relentlessly. Not content with winning my father's favor, she went on to kill my mother. Gone. Everything is gone. Ha 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 ha. Su Waning stared at the pile of ashes on the table, her laughter mingled with tears. Everything she had fought for her entire life, abandoning her conscience and pride, had been burned away so easily by me. But it's not over yet. I sat beside her, my smile radiant, innocent and romantic. But in Su Waning's eyes, I was a demon come to claim her soul. Li Jing is still at the private school, right? I'll take you out of here soon, away from the refugees and rebels. But he'll stay behind. At his age, with his fair skin and tender flesh. Those starving refugees. Su Waning went mad. No, no, no. That's not right. How did you know the refugees would attack? You're not that fool Li Huiyu. Who are you? Watching her descend into madness, I suddenly found it tedious. She was far more fragile than any enemy general I'd slaughtered in my past life. I'd only done this much, and she was already nearly broken. I watched her coldly, yet I couldn't recall what my mother looked like. Right. For me, Decades had passed in between. I truly couldn't remember. The mansion grew increasingly quiet. Outside the city, the refugees and rebels had arrived. Their waves of angry shouts disrupted the still night. Su Wanyin grew more terrified. She began begging me. Who are you? Who are you? I was wrong, I was wrong. There's a well by the door. I'll jump in soon to atone for your mother's sins. Hurry and find Jinger. Take him with you, he's your brother. You share the same blood. He even secretly brought you buns and pastries before. He never meant to harm you. Yes, Lu Jing was a good boy. My dead father and Su Wanyin raised him well. In those final years, besides servants secretly slipping me sweet potatoes and steamed buns, Lu Jing would often sneak me pastries he'd saved for himself. But I seem to have forgotten what Li Jing looks like. I close my eyes, straining to search my memory. Su Wanyin broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Perhaps a mother's love for her child is immeasurable. She must have seen in my expression that I harbored little hatred toward Li Jing. So she summoned every ounce of strength, using the chair that bound her to topple the candlestick on the table. The flame ignited the tablecloth and then her sleeve. She screamed shrilly, I'm going to atone for your mother's sins. Go save my Jinger. Save him. The dry air fueled the flames, which swiftly engulfed her entire body before leaping to the Persian rug spread across the floor. Ah! Save him. Save him. The fabric burned too fast, and with no water in sight, her fate was sealed. I retreated into the courtyard, listening to the piercing screams echoing from within, a wave of profound sorrow washing over me. Human nature is too complex. I rushed to Li Jing's private academy that very night, only to find it completely deserted. Many homes in Lingqing lay empty, with only the elderly, infirm, and disabled remaining, sitting in their houses with ashen faces. This scene made me think of one person. Lu Qingheng. Only he possessed the capability to quietly relocate most residents in just over half a day. In my previous life, Lu Qingheng knew I harbored a lingering emotional barrier. He understood my deeply complicated feelings toward Li Jing, so I could guess Li Jing had been taken away by him. Well then. Next, I'll cover his retreat. In my past life, we'd worked together like this 2 decades of tacit understanding, needing no detailed discussion. I climbed the city walls to find only a few veteran soldiers remaining. They stared blankly at the endless stream of refugees beyond the city gates. The young guards within the city must have been escorting Lingqing's citizens to safety. The city was empty. 56 elderly, weak, sick, and disabled remained unable to leave, while 34 veteran soldiers held the ramparts. I gathered the vulnerable and told them we would defend the city, to buy their descendants time to escape. They agreed readily, eyes brimming with tears as they prepared to burn their last moments of life. Such is human nature. At dawn, we made many rice dumplings and boiled several pots of soybeans. We carried them to the city gate and tossed them out one by one. Soybeans were scattered down by the ladleful. The refugees and rebels, who had been united in their intent to breach the city, instantly descended into chaos. Starving refugees fought fiercely over a single rice dumpling, some even biting chunks of flesh from others in the chaos. The rebel horses, drawn by the scent of soybeans, crowded together to eat them, ignoring their general's shouts and beatings. Hard times had driven the disaster-stricken people to gnaw tree bark and eat wild grass, leaving the war horses barely fed. I ordered the veterans to string their bows, attaching flammable cloth bundles soaked in lamp oil to the arrowheads. Once ignited, they drew back their bows and fired into the rebel ranks. Arrows ablaze rained down relentlessly upon the rebel formation. Chaos erupted instantly. Those engulfed in flames stumbled wildly, setting others alight in their wake. These rebels were so destitute they lacked armor. Their ragged clothes caught fire instantly. The air filled with the scent of burning flesh, stirring the dark desires within the starving refugees. Soon our arrows ran out and the flames died. The rebel leader and several junior commanders suffered severe burns, causing morale to collapse. Rebels skilled with bows returned fire, but our position atop the high city walls gave us a natural advantage. Only a few of us sustained minor injuries. This continued for half a day. By noon, the sun blazed overhead, and the refugees were starving and parched. We once again dropped down rice dumplings and soybeans. Those who couldn't grab a dumpling crawled on the ground searching for beans to eat, trampled by horses, their cries of distress rising. The starving refugees and the rebel forces immediately clashed, tearing at each other. Standing atop the city walls, I shouted loudly, "Those who obey me shall prosper, those who defy me shall perish." I lowered over a dozen large pots of porridge and several baskets of bowls from the ramparts. Instantly, the aroma of porridge filled the air. Those who came to receive the porridge would be treated as surrendered and spared, those who fought over it would be killed without mercy. Anyone who slew 10 or more rebels could claim an acre of fertile land and a thatched cottage. The grand promises I painted offered the refugees a glimmer of hope. A tall, dark-skinned refugee snatched a blade from a rebel's hand and swung it down, severing several rebel heads. Spotting him, I paused in surprise. An old acquaintance. With him here, I felt reassured. Meanwhile, the rebels began slaughtering the refugees. Some refugees went to fetch porridge, but before taking a single sip, they were shot dead by the rebel leader's arrows. The refugees went mad and began counterattacking the rebels. The rebel leader finally sensed trouble and shouted, "Everyone stop. Don't listen to this woman's nonsense. Once we storm the city, everything inside is ours." I sneered and shouted, "The rebels use the disaster victims as cannon fodder, then reap the rewards. People, think carefully. After you used your flesh and blood to help them breach other cities, didn't they burn, kill, and plunder all along the way? Didn't they leave you no grain, no way to survive? This is the rebels' usual tactic." "Yes. We stormed the gates, yet they reaped the rewards." A voice rose from the refugees, their pent-up fury finally unleashed. Though frail and unarmed, they swarmed like wolves, tearing into the rebels. If survival weren't at stake, why would we ever side with you rebels? Now that a path to life lies before us, you dare block our way? We'll fight you to the death. The refugees and rebels fought for half a day more. Manipulating hearts and minds is the very essence of those in power. I watched the carnage below with pity in my eyes. All this was my doing. My hands were already stained with mountains of corpses and seas of blood, just as in my past life. Such is the cruelty of those in power. Night fell again. Over half of the rebels and refugees lay dead or wounded. The rebels were actually driven off by the refugees. Amidst the wails echoing across the fields, I led the elderly, the weak, and the infirm in a quiet retreat, hiding in the basement of a wealthy merchant's home. This merchant was also among the vulnerable, a 78-year-old man who had lost a leg in his youth. Unable to travel far and unwilling to burden his children, he had chosen to stay behind. His basement was vast, originally built for ice making, large enough to shelter us all. It was also well hidden, tucked beneath an artificial rock garden in his courtyard. We had sealed the entrance with mud and stones. The only way out was through an underground river channeled in for ice making. When we sealed the entrance, I did not enter the cellar, though they pleaded with me to stay. I smiled and told them, "I still have work to do. Once it's safe, I'll come back to free you, or you can swim out through the underground river yourselves." After bidding them farewell, I returned to the city gate. The displaced people were resting outside the walls, and I opened the gate for them. "Fellow villagers, the original inhabitants of this city have fled. This city is now yours. There are houses to live in, hot water to drink, and enough food to eat. Come in quickly." The numb-faced refugees rose one by one from the ground. Some tentatively took a few steps toward me. Seeing I was just a frail woman, they gathered their courage and walked through the gate. Before long, they ran excitedly through the entire city, then rushed back out to tell those outside, "The city is empty. Come in quickly, this city is ours now." I stood once more atop the city walls and addressed them, "The rebels won't give up. You must defend the city." The refugees no longer wished to be displaced. Within these walls, they found homes they loved to live in and food to fill their bellies. Most crucially, vast fields lay beyond the city walls, their crops growing lush and green. "Yes, we must defend the city," they declared. "We cannot let those bastards in. They only burn, kill, and plunder. They won't let us live in peace. Right. We must not let them in." So we shut the gates and prepared boiling oil. When the rebels turned back, what awaited them was a pack of bloodthirsty, starving tigers, men who feared nothing but the defense of their homes. After 2 days of assault, the rebels collapsed. Their leaders were slaughtered, their prisoners conscripted as farmhands. I released the elderly, infirm, and disabled. Seeing their homes now occupied by refugees, their expressions were deeply conflicted. This was the best possible outcome. I nodded. The civil war between refugees and rebels had decimated their numbers, now only a third of their original force remained. The wealthy merchant's residence, known as the Qin Manor, was cleared by the refugees to house these elderly, weak, and infirm. The refugees held them in deep respect, and none objected. Simultaneously, I retrieved several girls who had been sold into brothels and imprisoned in their basements, assigning them to care for the vulnerable. Several days later, the settled refugees sent their leader to negotiate with me. This leader, Lin Mu, had been a hunter before becoming a refugee. His skills proved invaluable, and after saving many lives, he rose to become their chief. I met Lin Mu in a tea house. He was a young man, about 20-something, standing over 6 feet tall with dark skin and handsome features. His eyes lit up when he saw me, though he seemed somewhat reserved. "Young lady, despite your tender age, you don't seem like an ordinary person." I looked at him and smiled faintly. I had seen this man in my past life. He was the leader of the southern rebel forces, later subdued by Liu Qingheng and becoming one of his fierce generals. "You flatter me." "I'm not one for modesty. Had I not stirred the winds of war that day, they would have breached the city walls that very morning. Following the rebels' custom of pillaging and burning, the outcome would have mirrored my past life, a thriving city reduced to ruins. Yet now, the city remains intact, merely welcoming its new masters while maintaining its orderly rhythm. Everyone cherishes this rare peace. I sought you out today, young lady, to request the return of half the original inhabitants. This city is vast, our current numbers can't even fill half its dwellings. Moreover, among our survivors, only men remain. You understand what I mean." His gaze burned into mine, making me suspect he harbored improper intentions. I nodded. "Some natives will likely return. But if you wish to earn their goodwill, to marry their daughters, you must show sincerity." "Abundant sincerity." "We understand. We won't frighten them. We don't want to be refugees, nor create new ones." I gave him an approving look. "You are all righteous and responsible." "Naturally." Those in power win hearts not by demanding they keep promises, but by shackling them with dignity and faith. Just as men always bind women with chastity. After chatting with Lin Mu for a long while, he offered to escort me back to the Qin residence. Old Jiang, the veteran guarding the gate, shot him a cold glare. Realizing he wasn't welcome, Lin Mu scratched his nose and left. After he left, old Jiang pulled me aside and whispered, "You girl, that guy was looking at you funny just now. From now on, if he needs anything, have him deal with us old folks." I giggled and nodded. Grandpa Jiang really dotes on me. Of course. If we old-timers don't look out for you, who will? You're sharp as a tack, most people can't outwit you. But you're still a girl at heart. Physically, you can't match men. So keep your distance from them. Hum. The veterans had ways to contact the departed natives. Those willing to return were mostly common folk. Wealthier merchants or scholars had bought courtyards in other cities to settle down. In a way, this is for the best. It also allows me to put an old matter to rest. I intend to find a place to focus on my martial training. True, my mind has been sharpened by Liu Qingheng's tutelage, but my true strength lies in martial arts. With rebel forces rising everywhere and refugees fleeing, this chaos will persist for over a decade. Tough battles lie ahead, so honing my skills comes first. The veterans knew I was leaving and were deeply reluctant to see me go. But my attachment to Lingqing had faded, there was no reason left for me to stay. What I hadn't anticipated was that the moment I stepped through the city gates, Lin Mu rushed after me, blocking my path. He was clearly displeased with my decision to leave alone. "Miss Li, these are chaotic times. The outside world is extremely dangerous. You shouldn't go out." I stared at him silently. Master Jiang was right, this fellow had taken a fancy to me, but I wasn't his destined partner. Mind your own business. My retort left him speechless, clearly angered yet unsure how to vent his frustration. After all, we'd barely interacted before, our only exchange had been that incident at the tea house. Seeing my resolve unshaken, he stubbornly declared, "Then I'll accompany you." Just then, from the base of the city wall outside the gate, a stunningly handsome youth clad in snow-white robes coldly declared, "She has company. You can go cool off somewhere else." Hearing this, I turned toward the youth in shock. Lu Qingheng? Didn't we agree not to meet in this lifetime? What was he playing at? Lin Mu frowned, glaring at Lu Qingheng, hostility rising in his eyes. Who is he? Me? Humph. An old acquaintance. Lu Qingheng rolled his eyes in exasperation. Why not just say ex-husband? Ex-husband? Husband from a past life? All right, the air was thick with sourness now. 2 vinegar jars had inexplicably been knocked over. Your ex-husband? Lin Mu stared at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. You barely look of age, how could you have an ex-husband? I don't. I shot Lu Qingheng a sideways glance. He was the fallen scion of a noble house, now clean-shaven. His white robes accentuated his sharp, chiseled features, his aloof and icy demeanor gradually overlapping with the aura of the emperor he had been in a past life. At this moment, the youth radiating icy aura was eyeing me with a mocking smirk. That gaze felt like he'd caught me red-handed. I laughed bitterly. This lifetime, I truly wanted nothing more to do with him. Living with someone as calculating as a sieve was simply too exhausting. I retorted to Lin Mu with irritation, just like you, nothing but a swarm of reckless bees and butterflies. After speaking, I dared not meet Lu Qingheng's gaze and bolted straight toward the city gates. Truth be told, I felt a bit guilty. In my past life, he found me in the basement of a brothel, repaying a debt with a string of copper coins. But I played the snake and met his stick head-on, demanding he pledge himself to me, or else I would pledge myself to him. In short, the shameless one in my past life was me. Humph. Lu Qingheng snorted derisively, though he didn't call me out on it. He only stopped Lin Mu when the latter tried to follow me. At that moment, Lin Mu, having recently led refugees to victory over rebel forces, was riding high on his recent triumph. Facing Lu Qingheng's slight frame, he showed no fear, charging straight in with a punch. But in the blink of an eye, Lu Qingheng knocked him flat on the ground. The thud of a heavy body hitting the floor reached my ears. I glanced back and couldn't help but shoot Lu Qingheng a look of contempt. How old is he, still acting like this over a woman? Doesn't he feel any shame? Humph. He laughed in exasperation, shooting me a mocking glance. Before he could speak, Lin Mu seized the opening to counterattack, dragging him down to the ground. The two wrestled together. Humph. This time, it was my turn to laugh. Lu Qingheng was still young, having lived in poverty for years, his constitution extremely weak. Even with some martial arts foundation, going up against the bull-like adult Lin Mu meant he was bound to lose. TSK. Serves him right for being so arrogant. Outside the city gates lay a grassland stretching to the distant mountains. Now, in late autumn, the golden grass lay trampled to shreds by refugees and rebels. Where I'd ordered veterans to fire oil-soaked arrows, vast patches of scorched earth remained, blackened and charred. Fortunately, the refugees were so numerous that each flame was extinguished by a single footstep, preventing greater casualties. Tens of thousands of refugees and rebels perished in this battle. Even now, nearly half a month later, people still drag rotting corpses to the grassland's edge for burning. Black blood pools everywhere, swarms of flies and maggots swirl, crows caw incessantly. A nauseating stench fills the air. I feel as though tens of thousands of vengeful spirits glare at me, demanding to devour my flesh and suck my blood. Alas! I let out a long sigh. Then, with deep reverence, I knelt on the ground and bowed my head 3 times in solemn tribute to the souls lost in this tragedy. I felt a deep sense of guilt toward them, yet if time could be rewound to that day, I would still choose the same path. First, the city's resources were limited. Second, unless the rebels were eliminated, the people would never find peace. As I knelt, Lu Qingheng and Lin Mu ceased their struggle. Lifting their skirts, they knelt beside me. Lu Qingheng pressed his palms together. The reincarnation mantra flowed from his lips with clarity and ease, as if he had recited it thousands upon thousands of times. The guards on the city walls were selected from among the displaced refugees. Perched high on the ramparts, they stared at us with cold, hard eyes. They didn't recognize Lu Qingheng, but they all recognized me. During that battle, they didn't know I was the one stirring up the storm. But later, when life grew calm and their minds cleared, fear, even resentment, took root in their hearts. For among the dead refugees were their own dearest kin. After kowtowing 3 times, I hoisted my bundle and strode toward the distant mountains without a backward glance. Lu Qingheng, having finished chanting the Rebirth Sutra, did not follow but instead continued to block Lin Mu. "Why are you blocking me? We can compete fairly. You are unworthy." I entered the deep mountains, the path strewn with bleached bones. At this time, across the central plains, the Yellow River burst its banks, the Yangtze's waters surged inland, and the lands east of the Great Wall lay barren for thousands of miles, yielding not a single grain. Compounding this, desertification on the grasslands intensified. With no grass left for cattle and sheep, nomadic tribes were forced southward. The incompetent Lu royal clan offered no resistance, relocating the capital to Jinling. Natural disasters and man-made calamities, too many have perished these years. I sat cross-legged on a mountain rock, practicing breathing exercises, yet my heart refused to settle. Did heaven send us back to this era because it deemed our past deeds insufficient? What should we do? Time lost in mountain seclusion. 2 years passed, and my internal energy in martial arts had reached 80% of my former strength. Master Yu Li, Lu Qingheng's teacher, once said, "In intellect, 10 of me couldn't match Lu Qingheng. But in martial talent, 10 Lu Qinghengs couldn't surpass me." Amidst the mountain's austere life, I descended every month or so to procure supplies and inquire about current affairs. I heard Lin Mu had assembled an army of 10,000 men marching north to join forces with General Qingdao, the commander defending the frontier, to jointly repel the invading grassland tribes. In my past life, Lin Mu was the leader of the southern rebel forces. That he would support the imperial court in this lifetime was hard to believe. Had I not been deceived by Lu Qingheng, I would never have trusted it. Lu Qingheng, too, has abandoned his former ways. Instead of rallying rebels, he now travels the land, managing flood control, aiding disaster relief, and persuading various forces to submit to the court. Today, he stands as the foremost noble before Emperor Lu's throne, surrounded by many of his former advisors. Emperor Lu, impressed by his diplomatic skills, sought to wed his eldest princess to him. This only provoked Lu Qingheng to shave his head, retreat to a temple, and devote himself to Buddhist practices, withdrawing from worldly affairs. Furious yet powerless, corrupt officials dominated the court with no capable replacements. Emperor Lu made 3 visits to the hermitage, pleading for his return. I couldn't help but hold my breath for Emperor Lu. He kept a vicious dragon by his side, one capable of devouring him at any moment, yet he sought to bind this dragon firmly to himself through marriage. Little did he know, the dragon was merely a tool he wielded to stir up chaos in the realm. Emperor Lu's delicate daughter was, in his eyes, nothing more than a caged white rabbit, so foolish it was painful to behold. Just like me in the early days of my past life. Damn! Such unhappy memories are best forgotten. I stayed on the mountain for 3 full years. When winter came, I hunted 6 white foxes, skinning them to sew my clothes. I also tamed the wild stallion of the mountains, a proud, great black horse. Before the winter snow fell, I rode the black stallion north, straight to the military camp. This lifetime, Lu Qingheng made different choices than before. He entered the court to reform the corrupt government, using imperial power to quell internal strife and preemptively control the natural and man-made disasters of my past life. It had to be him. It had to be him. At last, I wouldn't have to raise my sword against my own people. Instead, I marched to the true battlefield to defend our borders. When I found Lin Mu, the steppe tribes had already reached the Yellow River. Due to the winter cold, both sides agreed to a truce. The Yellow River became the boundary, with each side refraining from interference. Lin Mu, now a great general, was both surprised and a mix of awkwardness and smugness upon seeing me. For he was already accompanied by another beauty, and he assumed I had come to join him. In the bright hall of the general's residence, I sat in the guest seat sipping tea. Lin Mu held the small hand of his newlywed wife, Gu Yanxi, gazing at me with a mix of pride and arrogance. Miss Li, I am now the general of Xianwei, and as this general now has a lawful wife, you can only be my concubine. Pfft. I couldn't hold it in, I sprayed tea everywhere. His words made me understand firsthand what it felt like to be disgusted to the point of wanting to vomit. His wife, Gu Yanxi, recoiled in disgust from the spattered tea. Her delicate face twisted in displeasure as she shot me a cold stare. What kind of uncouth woman are you? Had the general not spared me out of old affection, this lady would never have consented to your entry into our household. Gu Yanxi, the cousin of Marshal Qinggao, had always been haughty and proud. She'd already felt humiliated marrying Lin Mu, a commoner. Then, not long after their wedding, I arrived. With Lin Mu's dimwit brain, he certainly couldn't say anything to please her. Now he was clearly at odds with me. TSK. I pulled a handkerchief from my sleeve to press against my mouth, shooting Lin Mu a mocking glance. With Lu Qingfeng's brilliance setting the standard, where do you get the confidence that I, Li Huiyu, would rush to be your concubine? At the mention of Lu Qingheng's name, Lin Mu's face darkened. What does Lu Qingheng have that surpasses me, aside from his underhanded tricks? I snorted derisively, saying nothing. Lin Mu was instantly rendered speechless by my expression, mirroring Lu Qingheng's own. These years, he'd surely been kept on a tight leash by Lu Qingheng. Gu Yanxi's eyes flickered as she regarded me thoughtfully. Aren't you here to join the general? I nodded. Tomorrow, I'll cross the Yellow River to the Mongol camp. For the next 3 days, during daylight, you'll sound the attack horns, sail to the river's center, and launch fire arrows at their encampment. Remember, do not set foot ashore. On the night 3 days hence, you'll carry flaming oil and launch a surprise night assault. Then, noticing Lin Mu's suddenly grave expression, I offered a gentle smile. This is your one and only chance. If you can't seize this military merit, it won't be yours. Understand? Gu Yanxi sneered. You, a woman, want to cross the Yellow River? And you dare command our troops? Do you think this is a child's game? Shut up! Lin Mu abruptly cut her off with cold detachment. His gaze toward me grew even more intense, as if he were recalling something through me. Are you certain? Is that even a question? Looking at Lin Mu's darkened face, I missed Lu Qingheng more than ever since my rebirth. I closed my eyes and sighed deeply. Very well. Come if you wish. With that, I rose to take my leave, gliding away amidst their complex gazes. But I knew he would send troops. First, the impression I left him 3 years ago ran deep. Second, his greatest flaw was his reckless thirst for glory. I told Lin Mu we'd cross the river tomorrow, but that night I slipped into black robes. Alone in a small boat, I reached the opposite shore under cover of darkness and headed straight for the Mongol camp. Fire! Someone set it ablaze. After igniting several outer tents, I slipped away. Finding a large tree nearby, I climbed up and rested there through the night. Waking the next morning, I sat in the tree, nibbling on a dry bun while watching the Mongol cavalry drill. The Mongol cavalry truly lived up to their reputation as unmatched under heaven. Moreover, the Mongols themselves were tall and sturdy, their sinewy muscles covered by a layer of fat. Physically, they far surpassed the Han Chinese. Cavalrymen carried dried meat, rode fine steeds, bore bows and arrows, and wielded curved swords. Their guerrilla speed was blinding, the Han army couldn't match them. Yet these steppe warriors had a weakness, they were essentially landlubbers. Thus, at noon under the blazing sun, Lin Mu rallied his naval forces. They launched fire arrows from the river toward the Mongol encampment, forcing the Mongols to retreat and break camp. Seeing his shots miss their mark, Lin Mu had no choice but to withdraw his men back to camp. I had spent the entire day perched in a tree. The winter chill was biting, but thankfully, the fox fur I'd brought served as a warm, comfortable undergarment beneath my black robes. Night fell again. I quietly climbed down the tree, stretched my limbs in an unseen spot, then crept back toward the military camp. Moving like a ghost, I headed straight for one of the horse pens. They had several pens, I chose the most secluded one. Horses sleeping is quite interesting. If it were just one horse, it would surely sleep standing up. If it's a herd, a few will stand guard while most lie down. Because horses sleep on watch, ever vigilant. Suddenly, several strings of projectiles rained down from the sky, followed by a deafening crackle that shook the entire paddock. The horses whinnied in terror, leaping and dodging in panic, only to trample those lying down. The horses went wild, chaos erupted across the paddock, and many fine steeds were injured. I sighed inwardly, what a pity! The commotion immediately drew a large contingent of guards, and the paddock filled with the curses of Mongols. While they were calming the horses, I slipped over to another paddock and set fire to its hay shed. Since firecrackers were scarce, I only burned the hay sheds at subsequent paddocks. By the time I'd raced through every paddock, dawn had broken. That night, the Mongols sounded their enemy alert repeatedly. Soldiers searched vigilantly around the encampment, consciously bolstering defenses around the central tent. I glanced at the main tent, raised an eyebrow, then crept back up the large tree. Finding a comfortable perch, I closed my eyes and slept. During the day, I remained hidden in the tree while Lin Mu continued rallying the naval forces to harass the enemy. When direct attacks weren't possible, they'd sail their fleet around the river, causing trouble. The key was to stay afloat and keep them unsettled. When I slipped back into the Mongol camp at night, I clearly noticed increased patrols around the stables. I quietly knocked out 3 men, stole their bows, arrows, and rations, then found another tree. From there, I targeted the patrols outside the Khan's main tent. 1 arrow. 1 head. I only had 30 arrows total. After using them all, I returned to my original tree to sleep. That night, the entire Mongol camp was ablaze with torches. Every soldier was searching for the assassin. Thus, I spent 2 days here. On the 3rd day, broad daylight, I relied on my agile lightness skills and formidable martial arts to boldly storm the camp, killing several men. After drawing a wave of pursuers, I charged into their stables, mounted their finest steed, and galloped away. If they stopped chasing, I'd sneak back to steal another horse. At night, tens of thousands of Han soldiers crept up from the Yellow River. They carried bows and arrows coated in flammable oil. Once lit, the arrows rained down like hail into the Mongol tents. By the time the Mongol soldiers reacted, their movements were slightly sluggish after 3 days and nights with little sleep. As they frantically searched for horses, I had already quietly opened all the gates to the stables. A dozen wild stallions led by their leader charged into the paddocks, bullying every horse in sight before turning tail and bolting. How could the domesticated horses endure such provocation? They raced madly after them. I couldn't help but marvel at the wild stallion leader's prowess, truly worth the half year I spent taming him. As the deafening battle cries erupted from both sides, I had already severed their Khan's head and held it high. Your Khan is dead. Those who surrender will be spared. This battle marked our dynasty's first victory over the Mongols. The Mongols were strong and resilient. Even without horses, having gone 3 days and nights without proper rest, and knowing their Khan was dead, our soldiers still fought 2 against 1. Yet even such a tragic victory was worthy of the annals of history. For the Mongols retreated, leaderless, they had no choice. They fell back 300 li to the northeast, and we reclaimed a third of the cities. Though the Mongol troops remained fierce and skilled in battle thereafter, they were no longer a formidable threat. Their Khan was dead, establishing a new ruler required time and internal strife, granting the Liu dynasty a respite. The campaign concluded in the 4th month of the following year. From the 11th month of the previous year when hostilities began, 5 months had now passed. During these 5 months, I garrisoned in the newly recaptured frontier stronghold, assisting in several minor skirmishes. Whenever the Mongols installed a new Khan, I would find a way to eliminate him. The Mongol royal family harbored a deep, seething hatred for me, yet they could do nothing to stop me. Later, with the aid of skilled warriors, I claimed the life of their last prince, at the cost of a single blade wound. Thus, the grassland tribe scattered into fragments, growing ever weaker as they retreated deeper into the steppe. During this period, whenever there was no fighting, I commanded surplus troops to devote themselves entirely to reclaiming wasteland and expanding cultivated areas. For anyone who dared oppose me, it was merely a matter of raising my blade. Thus, by the time Liu Qingheng repatriated the refugees fleeing south, the lands north of the Yellow River had sufficient grain reserves to sustain them. In recent days, Lin Mu's wife learned of my actions. When she saw me, her initial haughtiness and awkwardness had vanished. Yet she didn't treat me with the mix of reverence and fear shown by the soldiers. Instead, she transformed into a clingy little vixen. Sisterly, how'd I do with that 5 animals exercise? Give me your take. Sisterly, I bought you a new dress, that soft green you love. Sisterly, I made you some sweets. Sisterly. I watched this woman fluttering around me like a butterfly, utterly exasperated. Hadn't she noticed her dear husband's face twisted with jealousy? Yen Shi. You've never made me desserts. You've never shown me your 5 animals exercise. My clothes are all bought by the steward. Ah, this. I couldn't help but shed a tear of pity for him. With the border secured and no warfare expected for at least 5 years, I had no intention of lingering here long. Yet as I prepared to depart, I unexpectedly received a letter from Lu Qinghen. This was the first letter he had ever written to me in my entire life. My beloved, the northern lands are just beginning to turn green, while here in Jiangnan the flowers bloom like brocade. Should you return south in early May, the peaches, plums, and bayberries will all be ripe and sweet. Your admirer, Hung. Pfft. The only thought that flashed through my mind was, this man must be ill. He swore off contact in my past life, yet in this one, he keeps surfacing to remind me of his existence. Sigh. I must still make a trip to Jinling. With the frontier now pacified, he's likely plotting to overthrow the old regime and establish a new government. When I voiced these thoughts to Lin Mu, he was so startled he couldn't speak. After a long while, he stammered, "You're going to rebel?" But the problem is, he was promoted by Lu Qinghen. Everyone assumes he's on Lu Qinghen's side. Now that I've confessed my plans to rebel, the former leader of the southern rebels from my past life actually started to fear me. I patted his shoulder, understanding his predicament. Yanxi is 3 months pregnant. I won't breathe a word of this to her, but you'd better keep your own mouth shut too. He glared at me angrily, my own wife? Why should you care? Get out if you're going to. He called me back midway. You're still a woman. With that bastard Lu Qinghen shielding you, don't push yourself too hard. I waved him off, mounted my glossy-coated wild stallion, and bid farewell outside the general's residence. I value my life. Towns north of the Yellow River lay desolate from population loss, while southern cities bustled with overcrowded crowds. Jinling, renamed Nanjing, thrived in unparalleled splendor. They say, the capital teems like the sea, its lanterns burning deep into the night. When I reached the gates of Jinling, Lu Qinghen was already waiting at the small tea stall outside. He had grown taller and stronger, his handsome features still drawing stares from passers-by. I patted the big black horse, sending it back to the mountains. Reluctant, it walked away, glancing back every 10 steps. I sat down at the tea stall, glaring at Lu Qinghen with icy eyes. On my journey south, I faced 12 assassination attempts and was poisoned 5 times in inns. I captured several attackers. When questioned, they claimed, "You're the regent's consort, some find you unworthy." This man unilaterally declared me married. He lowered his face, scratched his nose, and dared not meet my gaze. The dangerous ones? I intercepted them all. Blame my face for being too alluring, aristocratic ladies go mad for me. Just a reminder, if you don't guard this fine husband of yours, he'll be buried under a swarm of bees and butterflies. I knew perfectly well those attackers were deliberately let through, nothing but petty thieves with no real skill. His shadow guards followed me near and far, just like in my past life. I was protected so tightly I couldn't breathe, yet danger lurked at every turn. Now that I've reached the realm of martial arts master, his arrangements only serve to remind me how utterly foolish I was in my previous life, played like a puppet in his hands. This is one of his most suffocating traits, an unparalleled need for control. Knowing I disliked it, he stubbornly refused to change. I took a deep breath. Didn't we agree we wouldn't be tied to each other this lifetime? There are plenty of fish in the sea. Once I help you accomplish your grand ambitions, we'll go our separate ways. Deal? He sighed. Then these ambitions aren't so important after all. Then his eyes lit up, pleading with me. Let's have I born sooner. With his talent, he could take charge by his teens. No deal. We fell out, and he stormed off. When I entered the city, he bought another sugar-coated hawthorn and slinked back. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I refused his candy and sneered coldly. No, you're not wrong. In my past life, his apologies always came so swiftly. I'd always soften and forgive him, but his regrets were as worthless as a fart. Useless. I still followed him back to the Prince Regent's mansion because he was injured. Truthfully, the moment I saw him, I'd smelled the heavy scent of blood on him. At the time, fueled by anger and his seemingly normal demeanor, I hadn't paid it much mind. But when I refused his candied hawthorn, he collapsed straight toward me, unconscious. Only then did I realize his entire body was burning hot. In the Regent Prince's residence, Lu Qingheng's master bedroom, I stared at the deep, bone-exposing knife wounds on his back, my heart twisting with pain. After examining him, the court physician shook his head. I told him last night after the assassination attempt to rest properly. With this heat today, he should have stayed indoors to recover. These wounds could easily become infected. But he wouldn't listen. He went out to wait at the city gate first thing this morning. Your Highness, the Regent truly cherishes you. Humph. A ploy to win sympathy. But even knowing it was a ploy, my heart still ached. What can I do? He holds a place in my heart. He lay unconscious for a full day and night, his fever raging. I kept vigil beside him, day and night. During that time, sitting by his bedside, I watched him silently, quietly revisiting the days of my past life. As a couple in turbulent times, we were undoubtedly fortunate. Not only did we grow old together, but we also held high positions. When did I first harbor the thought that we should never meet again in the next life? Was it when I was pregnant, and he rushed off to battle? Alone in the deep mountains, I gave birth to our eldest son, Lu Yi. Immediately after delivery, I had to fight off wild beasts. Was it when he was gravely wounded protecting Yi? Had I arrived a moment later, I would have only been able to bury them both. When our daughter Lu Yan was born, the newborn was snatched by enemies. Rescued barely alive, she remained frail and sickly her entire life. After he ascended the throne, court officials eagerly recommended their daughters, hoping he would enjoy the blessings of multiple wives. He resolutely rejected all suggestions, leaving the harem empty. Yet palace maids still sought to climb the dragon bed. Or in his old age, when his old wounds flared, leaving him in unbearable agony. Countless, ineffable, and endless trivial matters, a lifetime is too long. I don't hate him, nor do I resent him. It's just that in our past life, being together was too exhausting. It felt like we never had a single day of peace. So, I want to let him go, and let myself go too. Truthfully, I wanted to let you go from the very beginning. Lu Qingheng awoke, glanced at me once, and knew exactly what I was thinking. But when I see other men trying to get close to you, I can't stand it. Seeing me silent, he swallowed hard and pondered. This lifetime, I won't be emperor. I'll find a capable one to take my place, then retire with you. How about that? I shook my head, utterly heartless. I find being alone quite pleasant, no burdens whatsoever. Even if I died tomorrow, I wouldn't worry about dragging my family down. But I'll always be thinking of you. He sighed. I nodded. I'll be thinking of you too. Lu Qingheng recuperated at the mansion for half a month, and I stayed by his side day and night. Just like in my past life, I didn't need to meddle in political affairs, but I had to observe them. My primary responsibility was his safety. Over those 2 weeks, I intercepted 5 waves of assassins, each more vicious than the last. No wonder he had such heavy secret guard protection, and had been so badly wounded last time. At the same time, I once again witnessed the trouble his beautiful women brought him. In those 2 weeks, countless noble ladies came to visit the ailing Regent Prince under various pretexts, so many I lost count. As the Regent Prince's consort, I turned them all away, but this only stirred widespread resentment. Days later, I received an invitation delivered by the gatekeeper, a personal letter from the eldest princess, extending an invitation to a flower-viewing banquet. Such gatherings, where women privately scheme against one another, are truly distasteful. Lu Qingheng remarked, it's merely a diversion tactic. Someone, frustrated by their failed assassination attempts, can no longer contain themselves. I understood, you always insisted I spare lives and send them back, was it for this day? Should I still go? The next morning, after being dressed for an hour by the mansion's matrons at the dressing table, I was finally stuffed into a carriage in my ceremonial robes, bound for the peony garden outside the city for the banquet. The peony garden, as its name suggests, was a garden filled with peonies. In the south, peonies were not particularly abundant. After all, with flowers blooming year-round, there was little reason to fixate on any single variety. Accompanied by the tall maid Lu Qingheng had thrust upon me, I was ushered into the garden. The riot of colors that met my eyes left a bitter taste in my mouth. The garden boasted a vast array of peony varieties, all brought south by the nobility when the imperial court relocated. Displaced people were starving, even resorting to cannibalism during their southern flight. Yet these privileged few could relocate an entire vast peony garden. And the peony garden was merely one among many such estates. Numerous other noble private properties bordered it. In the garden's waterside pavilion sat a group of radiant young women. One of them glanced over with a look of contempt. That's the regent's consort. She's not even that attractive. And yet, someone like her dares monopolize the regent, forbidding him from taking concubines. TSK. The pavilion was some distance away, and ordinary people couldn't make out the conversation clearly. But I could hear every word distinctly. That's the downside of having too much inner strength. I dug my fingers into my ears and found a quiet spot to sit. My thoughts raced. When in my past life did I ever stop him from taking concubines? I gathered a dozen beauties for him myself. He refused them, yet spread rumors that I was jealous. TSK, I'm more wrong than Doi. The princess has arrived. With a loud shout from a eunuch, today's main character made her grand entrance. I lifted my gaze to see a golden carriage adorned with agate and jade slowly halt before the peony garden. A jade-like hand emerged from the golden silk curtains at the carriage's front, resting on a palace maid's wrist. A woman clad in court attire, her skin whiter than snow, was gently assisted down from the carriage by the maid. We pay our respects to Her Highness the Princess. So this was Lu Yang, the princess who had once sought to marry Lu Qingheng. Truly a woman of such beauty, she seemed to have stepped out of a painting. Yet the one who sent assassins after me, at least 10 waves of them, was none other than her. What a venomous beauty! Spotting me, Lu Yang began to approach. Her perfume wafted through the air, her eyes shimmering like stars. Yet the palace maid beside her glared at me, her voice sharp and cold. How dare you! You see the princess and do not kneel. What punishment do you deserve? I replied helplessly, I am new here and unfamiliar with court etiquette. I beg your forgiveness, princess. Guards! Drag this treacherous woman out and beat her to death. The palace maid raved like a mad dog, yet the princess stood watching me, serene as a lotus. Only a flicker of cold, ruthless intent passed through her icy eyes. Guards obeyed the order and approached to restrain me. With a swift sidestep, I appeared behind the princess and plucked a golden hairpin from her bun, pressing it against her slender neck. By the imperial authority, no one could have imagined I would openly defy the throne. The princess clearly hadn't expected this either, yet she suppressed her fear without panicking, a quality that earned my respect. Still in her tender youth, her voice remained soft and delicate. She said, "You defy the imperial authority. No one can save you now. The regent's days of privilege end today. Henceforth, he shall be nothing more than a dog kept by this princess." I was utterly astonished. So you knew your father used you as a decoy to lure me to this banquet, a ploy to draw the tiger away from its lair. His aim was to remove me, this peerless master, from his side, to utterly destroy him. The princess raised her head haughtily. Yes. It seems you hold no weight in your father's eyes either. I sighed with pity, leaning close to whisper in her ear, "Do you truly believe someone as cunning as Lu Qingheng would fail to see through such an obvious scheme?" "Fool," I continued softly, "he was merely waiting for an opportunity, and you just handed it to him. Now, everyone knows your father sent assassins to kill him." Lu Yang wasn't entirely foolish. Her body stiffened instantly, her face twisted with regret and despair. Then, she saw the tall maid who had been concealed behind me step out of the shadows. I have devoted myself to the state, saving lives in disasters, controlling floods, and quelling internal unrest. My achievements are remarkable. Yet your majesty cannot tolerate this prince, repeatedly sending assassins. Now you even remove my beloved wife who protects me, seeking to kill me outright. Such an emperor is unworthy of this prince's loyalty. He removed the ribbon binding the maid's hair, readying it himself. He tore open his outer robe, revealing black martial attire beneath. This prince. Rebels! No sooner had the words left his lips than the clatter of ironclad horses echoed from beyond the peony garden. The young maidservants within the garden paled in terror, huddling together as they gazed at Lu Qingheng with equal parts fear and awe. Humph! This dog of a man's romantic debts surpass even those of his past life. Is this the sort of man worth seeing? Better not to see him at all, then the heart won't be troubled. After the Lu dynasty was overthrown, Lu Qingheng did not ascend the throne but continued as regent prince. As for the emperor, Gu Yanxi sat on the dragon throne, cradling her 1-month-old son dressed in imperial robes, looking utterly bewildered. Lin Mu glared at his wife and child atop the dragon carriage. Had he not known Lu Qingheng and Gu Yanxi had never even met, and that the baby boy's features were nearly identical to his own, he might have suspected his own head was a grassy plain where horses could gallop. Of course, the looks he received from other court officials were anything but innocent. Still, I understood Lu Qingheng's decision. In my past life, Lin Mu's eldest son, Lin Ziyu, rose to the rank of chancellor. In every way, he was no less capable than my son Yi, a rare talent indeed. Once the dust settled. On a dark and stormy night, I slipped out of Jinling. I went to the mountains to retrieve my black stallion, ready to roam the 4 seas. Before leaving, I left a note in Lu Qingheng's study. Better to forget each other in the vast world than to cling together in hardship. The end.